I never mentioned how hectic it was the day we got back from our cruise. Given that, the trains in Sydney weren't running, so we had to get a tram, then we had to get a replacement bus. Turns out everything was fine. We got there 40 minutes early, so that was really convenient. But then as it was, we had to get the plane back home, and, this is still while early stages of everyone being scared about coronavirus, but, we weren't too panicked about it. Got back home, Helene's dad came, picked us up, drove me to Bell Station, so I was able to get the train home, because it was about an hour and a bit of a train ride from there, which is fine. And I didn't have too much luggage on me, which was also fine. Got home, good timing, had lunch, was able to unpack the new DVDs that had come in the mail, and all this and all that. Talked about my trip with my parents and my family. Checked out YouTube, saw how everything had gone with the new release of, by that stage, the Twin Peaks from A to Z box set. But then that night, I had something unique. I had a concert on, which I have been to quite a few concerts in my life. But this was the final concert from Elton John, and hence the t-shirt. And during one of his songs, which I had been listening to his songs of recent, the song Candle in the Wind, which you probably know of course, is a song about Norma Jean, aka Marilyn Monroe. And it was interesting, because while he was singing this, they had footage of Marilyn Monroe up on screen. I'm thinking, oh, okay. So I turned to my dad, I'm like, so Norma Jean is Marilyn Monroe, right? And he's like, yeah, she is. And so that night, on the train ride home, this is after a 3-hour concert, and I'd been up since 6, and it was about midnight. So it had been a long day. I was checking the JB Hi-Fi website to look for the Forever Marilyn box set, which is something I'd always been interested to get to, but had never bought. And I looked up on other websites, and the cheapest one was actually from JB Hi-Fi, which also happened to be the 8-film set rather than the 4-movie set, which I was much happier with. And so, of course, I bought it, and this is the Forever Marilyn box set. So arguably I could do this as a calm and relaxed talk, but I wanted to focus more on, of course, Monroe. Unfortunately, these are the only films I have that star her, so I don't have her final film, which is interesting, because as it is, these are already 8 pretty decent movies to look at and to review and to analyze her performance and kind of the stigmatism around her, especially with being typecast and stuff like that. These are all 20th Century Fox / MGM films as it is. They all show that she has very good range, but a good portion of them, she is put into a certain character type, a certain stereotype, which of course is ironically the complete opposite of the real life version of her. In this terms, of course, she is a gorgeous woman, but she was also in real life very intelligent. She just had the problems with substance abuse, which I'm not going to get into, and I'm not really going to go into the abusive relationships she's had outside of, I'll probably touch on it a bit for the 7-year itch. But of course, I've never actually reviewed an actor / actress who's passed away. So I didn't really know how to touch on this, and if I should be more polite about it, like, how some people might look at, like, childhood films and stuff with the rose-tinted glasses, the whole nostalgic element to it, and be like, oh, it wasn't that bad, and, you can give it this praise that doesn't actually exist for a film that's probably actually quite terrible, but you'd still give it 5 stars because, hey, nostalgia. I've never seen any of these films until now. I'd known about heaps of them, had seen parts of them and that kind of deal, because, TV exists. So we're going to get into it, and the films that I'm going to look at are Niagara, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, How to Marry a Millionaire, River of No Return, Bus Stop, The 7-Year Itch, Some Like It Hot, and There's No Business Like Show Business. But yeah, so we're going to look at her films, and I will briefly detail elements of her life that I know of, but outside of that, this isn't... I'm not here to document her life and her troubles. I'm here to document how effective she was as a actor, as a performer, as an entertainer. Because you have a heap of varieties here. You've got a noir, you've got... so of course that gives you the whole tragic element to it. You've got a lot of films where she sings, where she dances. There are films where she looks incredible, and there are films where, I mean, she still looks incredible, but she's not in these overly fancy dresses or show-tune-y clothing. And of course, then there are the films where she's a dumb blonde, and some where she is an intelligent one. So it's she showed off quite a range. So let's get into it. So we're starting from the top with Niagara from 1953. My quote, of course, as I always put these down, I note down a quote and I write a review. In this case, I haven't written down the reviews that I've put up on Letterboxd just for a bit of a change, but also because these are more structured as reviewing her performance, as well as briefly reviewing the films. So my quote, "Hey, get out the fire hose." Phoenix. They don't have a lot of good one-liners in these films. Most of them are like buddy-up liners, you know, one joke and then lands by what the other person says. This was, I think she comes out, this is Monroe comes out of a room or something, and they suggest to get the fire hose because she's too hot to handle, that kind of deal. So this film is made in Technicolor in a... I don't think it's an actual 4:3 aspect ratio, but it's that kind of aesthetic style, so I probably should look that up better. You know, it's the Letterboxd version. It's directed by Henry Hathaway, and Monroe plays Rose Loomis, wife of a potentially mentally unstable older husband. And by older husband, he's probably in his 40s, because she's in her 20s. Older. They always pin the older person as if they're really old, but it's like... Nah, most of the old people in these films are like in their 40s or 50s. No one is over the age of 60 in these films. So, her looks. Let's touch on her looks. She's always wearing red lipstick, as in when she's in bed and in the shower, you know, not just the normal situations. The first time you pretty much see her, she's naked under a sheet, and she's wearing red lipstick with her hair done up. The hair done up thing I'm totally fine with, because she has curly hair as it is. But... I don't know if it's natural curls, but at the same time, it's shown to be curly hair in this film. But she has bright red lipstick on. I'm like, I don't think that's accurate, but okay, movie, whatever you want to say. And then, of course, when she's in the shower, she's literally still wearing red lipstick, because they kind of abuse the aspect of her being partially naked in this film. I don't think this is the one where... you actually see her silhouette naked through a janky shower door. But at the same time, one of these films has that, and it might actually be this one. And of course, the camera likes to watch her as she walks away. She has this particular type of walk, and they obviously emphasize her ass. They don't zoom in on it or anything. They just watch her, kind of as if they just left the camera rolling, just to kind of make it seem less on the nose. But you know. So there's obviously that aspect to this film and to a lot of her films where she is looked at quite in the sexual point of view. There are films that aren't like that hardly even touch on it, which is very, very interesting. But yeah, I don't want to say that they over-sexualize her or they misappropriate their use of Monroe, but at the same time, they kind of do. Like, they know what she's... I mean, not that she knows what she's like. This is her earliest of her career. So this is when she's pretty much just come out of Playboy magazine. Or in this next, few months, because 1953, a big year for her. 3 feature-length films and Playboy magazine cover. I think she was the first cover model for Playboy. And, of course, she appeared completely naked on that. So, of course, there's a big attraction to her looks. Luckily, she's also naturally talented. She can act, she can dance, she can sing. She probably did get a lot of teachings and trainings over the period of her life, but at the same time, she can at least present that, because on camera, she is incredible. For multiple reasons, not just her looks. It's very acknowledged in the film as to how attractive she is. Everyone is always glued to her, even the ones, with female partners who, they will obviously hit their male partner in the groin for looking at her for too long. So, there's that kind of thing. Kind of played almost jokey, but at the same time, it's the film being very on the nose about, yeah, okay, she's attractive. We're all looking at her, even the cameraman, even everyone behind the cameraman. She plays the melodramatic quite well in this film, because this film is actually a noir, strangely in Technicolor, but at the same time it still quite works, because of course it's a murder mystery film. But also she's more or less the femme fatale. God, that took forever to look up. So she's kind of a femme fatale in this film, where, she's gorgeous, she has ulterior motives, and she is using those ulterior motives to, of course, her benefit. But of course, it is kind of melodramatic as well, this film, because of course she's got the aspect of her husband dies, quote unquote. And of course she's sad about it and stuff like that. But she pulls off really well. Like, she's convincing enough as an actress, especially for a 1950s film. Not to say 1950s films are bad in terms of actors, but they can have a certain stereotype or very particular way of portraying elements that seems very for the time, if you will. Oh, and there are plenty of these films when it comes to the idea of sex. That's a very for the time kind of notion. Yeah. So if she has to play dumb about her husband's disappearance, she will, and quite convincingly well, because we, of course, know as the audience what's going on. They lay it out for us just as much as they lay it out for pretty much her. Like, we know exactly what she's doing, what she's thinking, but that actually makes us root for her more, not because she wants to get away from her husband because she doesn't like being with him anymore, and she likes this younger man that she wants to hook up with and run away with. That's not exactly a very positive thing, but at the same time, we understand her point of view when her husband, who's meant to have died, is coming back to kill her. So, there is that. She mostly plays her actions towards other characters, especially given how, the audience is, of course, aware of her moves and her motivations for the majority of the film. Does she play her character well? Yeah, I believe so. I mean, she's pinned as the bombshell that's married to an older guy, and of course that means the older guy isn't happy about her youth because she always wants to go out partying and clubbing, and everyone's always looking at her, and he wants to keep her to herself and he's like, I'm embarrassed to be with you because you're too young and attractive and everyone's always looking at you, and that means everyone's always looking at me as well. They're not looking at him. Because of this, she plans with the younger guy, whom she's now romantically, secretly involved with, to, run away and to potentially kill the husband, and they plan to do that at Niagara, utilizing Niagara Falls as a way to kill the husband. So, spoilers, I guess, if you really care. She's convincing in her final moments when she's running from her husband, who intends to kill her. Does she die? Does she not die? I'm not going to tell you, because you can watch it for yourself. It's actually quite a really good film. The reason why I mentioned the aspect ratio is because this film, done in 1953, doesn't utilize wide angles, because of course it's that letterbox look. It's all square. Because her next film, and all the rest of her films in this catalogue, are all in widescreen. I have noted down what it actually is, but I have forgotten to tell myself what it is. CinemaScope, that's the one. So either way, this is an interesting thriller, and a surprisingly good noir, even though of course it is captured in colour rather than black and white, but at the same time, Blade Runner. Definitely an interesting first film to watch in the catalogue of her films, because it obviously displays her sex appeal, but it also gives her enough range to showcase the fact that she's actually a good actress. So there you go, that's a pretty good thing. I gave this film 3.5 stars out of 5. And next we'll talk about Gentlemen Prefer Blondes while we're still standing here. Except I'm going to move over here because it's more dramatic that way. Ho ho! Different angles. Actually, different angle. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes is a 1953 film directed by Howard Hawks. He's very well known for this period of time. Again, notably, 53, her second of 3 films done in the same year. Okay, so for reference, Niagara's aspect ratio is 1.33 to 1, which is kind of... you got black bars on the side, it's kind of 4:3, but not exactly, because it's more towards cinema rather than it is towards TV, of course. Whereas Gentlemen Prefer Blondes is just that bit wider at 1.37 to 1. So she hasn't done CinemaScope yet. But it's coming up next, I promise. So in this film, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, we upscale the Monroe. She is a lot more present in this film. She is still present quite a bit in the previous film, but the previous film focuses still on other characters who are the main characters, which this may be surprising, but she's not the main character in all of the films, even though she's top billed for a lot of them. She's rarely the main character. It's very strange how they underutilize her. In this film, she's co-leading the film with Jane Russell, and they're both similar but different kinds of characters. So, of course, Monroe in this film, she sings, she dances, and her sex appeal is used for comedic effect over dramatic effect. She plays Lorelei Lee, a somewhat dumb blonde type. However, she has more than enough brains to her character to be more than what she looks like. In fact, the quote I use for the review is, "I can be smart when it's important, but most men don't like it." And she actually continues to say how her fiancé in the film is the only person who actually cares about her outside of that stuff. He doesn't mind her being smart. He's not against it at all. He wants her to be herself. Now, the person she's with in the film, her female friend, who I haven't written down the name of because I'm an idiot. It says it right there. Oh, it just says Marilyn Jane Russell. Oh, damn, even the box set isn't being nice. Okay, so Jane Russell's character is more of the... Is it bad to say more of the brunette? Because she is brunette, but she sings, she dances, and makes most of the decisions, but also realizes she's much smarter of a person. But her end game in the film is she wants to marry a millionaire kind of dude. She wants to meet someone, and on this big boat that they're going on to do their... actually, they're not even performing, because Monroe's character is engaged, and she's going to France to get married to him because her fiancé's father disapproves of her because he thinks that she's just a ditzy blonde who's pretty but nothing else. Of course, isn't that wrong? Whereas her best friend is, also a showgirl and wants to meet a guy on the boat. And it's interesting to have two different dynamics. Again, both comedic, and they both play to two different strengths, because Monroe plays towards the dumb blonde strength, but has so much character to herself, whereas her friend is... Jane Russell's character is much smarter, but still also has very distinctive a personality. They're like the perfect polar opposites that combine, like interlock so perfectly. One takes care of the other in whatever type of situation kind of deal. Of course, Monroe in this film is stunning, and they really utilize that with costuming and technicolor. I mean, their opening number is the two of them in these red dresses, and they sing this quite a decent song, because again, all the songs are pretty, I'd say, maybe arguably completely, totally forgettable, but at the same time, they're not bad, they're perfectly for their time. They're to the aspect of musicals where you don't get the element of they have to obligatorily sing every 5 minutes. In fact, it's just a few songs a film. To be fair, the most musical film that Monroe was actually in, she sings 2 songs, and that film is based on a theatre production and is meant to be more about the musicals, to the point that most of the songs don't even have anything to do with, the plot. And some of these songs, in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, the songs more or less are. They're not exactly, but more or less a combination of what the people want. especially Jane Russell's character, who it's pretty obvious what she wants. So, of course, pretty much the main aim of her character is that she's on her way on a boat with her best friend to France, where she'll get married. Along the way, she tries to get her best friend with a rich, nice man, whilst avoiding some, let's see, to extent, drooling men that follow her everywhere. Yeah. It's arguably the best of her early points in film to tune into, as the film really demonstrates her ability and her charm and her charisma, because she can sing, she can dance, she can act. This is probably maybe the best first film to start her off with, but at the same time, if you have this box set, it's not a bad thing to go for. But Niagara is just something so different, because you don't expect her to be like that. Like, you think Marilyn Monroe, you think sex symbol, you think singing and dancing, maybe, but mostly sex symbol. And then you get Niagara, no singing, no dancing, sex symbol, yes, but she's a femme fatale. She's not the, come check out my boobs because I have them. She's, I want to get the fuck out of here because my husband is old and creepy and I want to do this other guy. So, yeah, femme fatale. Overall, I gave this film, I think I gave it 3.5 stars. I didn't actually write down. Either way, pretty good film, definitely worth recommending. 1953's How to Marry a Millionaire. This is the first of Monroe's films to be in CinemaScope. And they really make it obvious that it's CinemaScope. So this is directed by Jean Negulesco. Or Jean Negulesco. It might be French. It might not be. It starts with a 6-minute jerk-off about how cool CinemaScope is, featuring a live orchestra who score the film. Not even joking, it's just 6 straight minutes of an orchestra. They do use some moving camera shots, but it's mostly just still shots and wide as fraggin' doodles angles, because of course this is like one of the first times they've ever used CinemaScope, and they're really emphasizing the wide angle, which is fine, you know. But then there comes, of course, the question, which I don't know how much of it I will discuss, but at the same time, when you get a new technology, do you always have to really use it? And you also need to kind of learn how to use it properly. So, of course, in a film like this, a lot of it's really, really, really wide angles, which captures a lot of stuff, but it also means you can't take multiple takes, because it would be awkward as hell to cut, because, yeah, they're not setting up that way. They're not setting up with, we'll have this shot, then we'll move to this shot, then we'll move to this, like, start with a really wide shot, then move into a close-up shot of the person. Then we'll have more of a mid-shot featuring, 2 people talking to each other. Maybe we'll have one person here and cut to a different angle of another person here. But no, in this CinemaScope presentation, hi, I'm Marilyn Monroe. Hi, I'm this other person. Hi, you can't exactly hear me because as long as I'm walking, the mics can't exactly follow me. I'm the third person. That's what happens in this movie. And it happens a lot. Because if you have 3 people on screen, 2 people sit down, 1 person moves around, and you can tell when they're moving between microphones. It's hilarious. Anyway, let's get on to my review. My quote, men aren't attentive to girls who wear glasses. This film manages to have a narrative whilst also being an advertisement for both the shockingly wide-angle lens cameras and New York, plus Maine. But, that's only Maine. That's a lot for a 95-minute long film. Of course, with the 6-minute introduction of the band. Oh, did I mention all these films are 95 minutes long? Actually, in fact, I will tell you, they're actually really good in terms of runtime, because most of the time, films in the 50s would be 90 minutes at the average. So you've got, let's start with the first end. Niagara is 88 minutes. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes is 91 minutes. How to Marry a Millionaire is 95 minutes. River of No Return is 90 minutes. There Is No Business Like Show Business is 117, but that one really elongates and doesn't have that much Monroe. It's mostly focused on the musical elements of the family. Bus Stop is 94 minutes. 7 Year Itch is 104 minutes. And Some Like It Hot is 121 minutes. So yeah, Monroe plays Paula Debevoise. Who the fuck comes up with these names? She's a pretty dumb blonde who needs glasses to see but chooses not to wear them because, see quote, men aren't attractive attentive to girls who wear glasses. Do you get it? She's the one who says it because she wears glasses because she's blind as a bat. So of course, she, like the other two girls in her apartment, are models who want to marry millionaires. I wonder where they got that idea from. There's a good film called How to Marry a Millionaire. The film is, well, it's alright, actually. It has its moments with some good lines, and Monroe has some nice comedic, mostly slapstick moments. For example, oh my god, there are so many times where she walks into things because she can't see. My favourite is they're doing a triple date with 3 other millionaires, all the white men. And they're all on 3 individual dates in the same restaurant. And so they all go to the powder room. This is when the powder rooms were fucking gigantic. This was like a room where 20 people could sleep in. So they're all like doing up their makeup and stuff. They got this long ass mirror. So say you're standing here and the mirror goes all the way around the room, but the camera angle sees all of it. It's beautiful. Such a well done shot. See, that's a good use of CinemaScope, really utilizing it. And all the women look at themselves in their dresses in the mirror, then they all go out. However, Monroe's character is the last one to leave. She checks herself out in the mirror, and it is a magnificent shot. However, then she proceeds to turn around and walk towards the door and bump into the wall next to the door, because of course she can't fucking see. It's a bit over the top, but at the same time, it's hilarious. And they don't do it that much in the film. You'd be surprised. There are only 2 real slapstick moments I can remember, and 1 moment where she can't see, and because of that, she gets on the wrong plane. Which I was thinking about the whole entire time the scene was happening, and then they reveal it at the end of the scene, and I'm like, oh my god, I was right. She really is that goddamn blind. And that's of course funny. It's hilarious. And of course, because these films are pretty much cut up into thirds, for each woman, even though, of course, it's not like, oh, Monroe will be the first third of the film, then we'll talk about this other one, then we'll talk about... they interweave it pretty well. So, of course, the pacing flows and everything. And so you don't have that much time to see her in this slapstick energy, but at the same time, when she does it, it is pretty good. It's pretty funny. And that's the joke. Of course, you could have your criticism, of course, of like, oh, she's a dumb blonde who should be wearing her glasses because then she'd be able to see. So she's not exactly wholeheartedly dumb, but it is an additional aspect to her character, which you could, of course, criticize, but at the same time, she's still playing a character. And, of course, this is also when you realize this is the second film where she's done a dumb blonde character. Yeah, it won't be her last. The film, the last in her 1953 slate, showcases her in an ensemble cast whilst restricting her to the dumb, pretty blonde role. You have the smarter brunette, then you have the more practical brunette. Her looks are underplayed in the script outside of really one key scene for her character. And again, one of them would be where she has the dress with all the mirrors. But there's like one discussion between her character. Oh, I actually mentioned here. She meets her husband-to-be, and they discuss, he mentions, oh, you are an attractive woman, but you still look really good in glasses. So that, of course, fills her with confidence because he wears glasses as well and whatever. So it becomes a relatable thing. Oh, that's cute. She's not just marrying some ditzy douches. Fucking rich, dumb cunt. Anyway, so... But, of course, she does do modelling, in which she models one pretty good-looking dress. And then when she sits down, she trips on the thing because, of course, she can't see. To the point that she doesn't even recognize the guy that she's doing the modeling for, which isn't touched on, but, of course, it's very much there. She's mostly utilized as the dumb comedic relief. However, again, she's not over the top. Her parts are quite perfectly balanced throughout the film's runtime, so you don't think, oh, when Marilyn comes back on, she's going to do something stupid, or she's going to do something slapstick. It just happens, and it's so out of the blue, and it's just fucking great. she does it really well. Look, she commits to her performances, and I think that's really commendable, even if her performances are very, even if her characters aren't the best or most realistic. So yes, though not my favourite of her performances, and far from my favourite of her films, because it doesn't utilise her as much, because it's an ensemble cast, and we'll get to that in a later film as well, I still think it's worth checking out. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. So you may have noticed that I'm not exactly detailing the plot as much. Some of these are pretty obvious plots, and very, very minor. Because of course Niagara, a woman tries to get away from her husband and ends up trying to kill him as well, but it backfires. Gentlemen prefer blondes. I've detailed the plot enough. One woman's trying to get to another place and to marry her husband, and stuff happens. And of course, How to Marry a Millionaire. They just want to marry millionaires. It's simple as that. It's not like a whole instruction list, but at the same time, they all find their own individual person who may or may not be a millionaire. It uses good amounts of comedy, but it is a different style of film. Then, of course, you have, I'd say, my easily least favourite of her films, River of No Return, which is disappointing because, of course, that's actually a pin-up of her right there, a full-body pin-up. It is my dad's, and I don't know how long he's had that for, but he also has, like, Fred Astaire. Oh my god, it is Fred Astaire. I just remembered. Fred Astaire, I'm pretty sure it is. And Humphrey Bogart on the other side of this door. Which, again, another thing that they do in Gentlemen, in How to Marry a Millionaire, the real-life wife of Humphrey Bogart, who is, of course, an actress, is in How to Marry a Millionaire, and she's trying to marry an older man, and she says how she doesn't mind older men. She likes that guy from African Queen, that being Bogart, her husband. It's a joke. It's a good joke. My parents picked it up because, of course, they knew that, but and they laughed a lot. I was wondering what the hell they were laughing at. I wasn't watching it at the same time as them. I was watching my own film in the theatre room. But then, of course, they talked to me about it the next day, and when I ended up getting around to watching the film, I saw the joke, and I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty good. So that's a very good real-life contextual one that I don't think many people of my generation would know about. So, of course, River of No Return is a 1954 film directed by Otto Preminger. My quote, one thing about this, the longer you last, the less you care. Conveniently, that is actually said by, of course, Monroe, who then proceeds to faint. Anyway, so this is not my type of film. It's a flaky romance under the guise of a Western. I'm not big on Westerns. I like them. Westerns have some really good films. I mostly am more of a spaghetti Western or satirical Western type of dude. Regular Westerns are kind of boring and all the same. Some of them are different, but not really. So yes, most of the time they are either on a boat or eating. It's that kind of a film. It's kind of boring. Like, again, because it's CinemaScope, they're really utilizing the, hey, look at these landscapes and stuff. And, you know, How to Marry a Millionaire does it pretty decently outside of when they have the big conversational parts, because, of course, you've got that one person who walks around the whole entire thing, and they can't cut away or whatever, or do closer-ups, angles and stuff like that. They haven't learned to do that by this stage for CinemaScope. They're really utilizing the, look at the landscape, look at how wide angle we can go. We can capture everyone in one shot. So you just have to move your eyes a lot. But of course, then you have, and I mean, look, it does use some good like shots, like when it does actual landscape shots. Some of them are stunning. But then, of course, you have River of No Return, where it's just, look, it's the countryside. It's a Western. It's not a very good Western, and because of its use of CinemaScope, it lacks a lot of tension. Like, there are some fight scenes in this film that are just so, the camera sits still like it is now, for example, my camera, and you just have two people just kind of brawling, cut away to one person just being like, cut back to the brawl. Not really any music through tension or anything, it's just meh. So Monroe plays Kay Weston, O-N, not E-R-N, a saloon singer who runs away with a man to a city to collect riches, but on the way runs across our protagonist, who is a farmer, and his son, who only just reconnected at the very start of this film because the mother had passed away. while he was in prison. The husband of Kay steals the farmer's horse and rifle and runs to the city. And the farmer, his son, and Kay follow via a raft whilst being attacked by Indians. Native Americans. Hey, Rex. Bye, Rex. Monroe she's fine in the film. Like, it's all shot in CinemaScope, so there are no, like, close-ups, so you can't really get an idea of how, like, her face is reacting to any of this. She doesn't really have much of the body acting, unless she's, like, dancing or doing something like that, or she's particularly walking in the way, or her character really demands her to have a particular prowess in terms of how she positions herself and how she walks and stuff. This film doesn't really have much. She just kind of stands there, talks, walks around. That's about it. You don't get close-ups or anything. This isn't just on her. This is everyone. So it's like, yes, it's so disembodied from the rest of the film, and it's annoying. You know, so, I mean, you don't even... She does kind of get raped in this film. Kind of. The main character, Farmer, kind of forces himself onto her and kisses her until something else happens. They get distracted by it. The kid starts calling for them or whatever because of whatever reason, and they just ignore it and they never come back to it. You know, like all Westerns. What else do you expect? This is obviously the least favorite of her films. That's at least in her collection, and that's not because of the film at hand. It's because of the genre and some certain depictions and how it's shot. So it is kind of the film. That's the problem. Yeah. Even though it's 90 minutes, you can still fall asleep to it, as all the conflict is so boring through how it's shot and through how it's directed. It's cheap Western tropes with boring hand-to-hand and boring gun combat with no tension, just long wide-angle shots of men being men. I gave it 3 stars. I don't really know why I gave it 3 stars. It's probably more of a 2.5 star film, given how boring it is. But, you know, Westerns be Western, I guess. I would say How to Marry a Millionaire is definitely a much better film, but I still only gave that one 3 stars. And now, of course, we're on to There's No Business Like Show Business. This is a 1954 film directed by Walter Lang. My quote, "My age is the only thing I lie about, and I don't add on, I take off." That wasn't Monroe who said that, it's a different character. Oh, this is the big one. This is the really long film. So Monroe plays Vicky, a woman who starts as a waitress in a club where she meets Donald O'Connor's Tim Donahue, part of the Donahue Five. They're our main characters who we see the mother and father first as they're performing, and they introduce, look, there's a third Donahue, and then they do another performance a few days later, and look, suddenly, oh look, there's a fourth Donahue, and then a few years later they do another performance, and there's a fifth Donahue. And then, of course, cuts to them all being in school, and then them being adults, and now they're all Showtime entertainers, but they all want to live their own lives. And Monroe just happens to be part of that. Okay, so she shows off an act to a producer in this club, which later gets her into a big show in Florida, where, of course, the Donahue Five are performing. A romance blossoms between herself and Tim, the one that she meets early in the film, as they go off together in a show with his sister Katie, Vicky being the lead of the show. So Vicky, of course, Monroe's character, is the lead of this trilogy with 2 other Donahues. The oldest of the Donahues wants to be a priest. So he goes off to priest school, and the parents are now like, oh, what are we going to do? And they're just like, well, let's just do our own thing, you know, go back to just the 2 of us performing. And, you know, the kids who are now in their 20s are performing with Monroe's character, and it's all fun and good and whatever. A tension breaks out between Tim and Vicky, and this means that Tim runs away. He disappears, whilst Vicky continues starring the show with Tim's mother and sister. So Tim's mother actually joins in to replace Tim's role because she knows all the lines and all that kind of stuff. And apparently it's still a smash hit anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So yeah, by the end of the film, Tim returns for a final show at a theatre with his family, and of course Vicky joins them in singing the iconic "There's No Business Like Show Business" song. Even because I watched this with Mum and Dad, and Mum made me complain how, like, God, I sat through all of that just to get to that one song. What a waste of time. So, hey, that's fun. That's not even the end of my review. So yes, though she doesn't appear too heavily in the role, which is again another thing when she does ensembles, at least this one she's in a whole lot less than she is in, like, the How to Marry a Millionaire. She is, of course, still a key part in the plot. If not for her character, Tim wouldn't have run away and there wouldn't have been this whole, final act comeuppance and stuff. She plays the part perfectly well as a talented girl who is still trying to find her feet on the musical stage until she finally does find her feet in a show that lasts over 34 weeks. So that's fun. Her costumes are quite standout, more so than her songs, which are ultimately forgettable, let's be honest. But they have, I guess, a relatable theme of lust and later laziness. That one's more like a comedic version of a song. So, of course, she still has this presented sex appeal. But she is, of course, more focused on as a character than as an object. It's more or less during her dance scenes and singing scenes that she actually is... A lot more sex appeal is laid onto her, mostly throughout her costuming. They really take advantage of that, her costuming and what she wears, because it is... crikey. She's very attractive. Anyway, overall the film is enjoyable. It feels a bit long for its runtime, like it's, 2.5 hour film? It's long. It feels its weight in length, because by the end of the film you're like, oh, sorry, what? We're doing the big song now? Okay, I can enjoy this film again. I totally wasn't bored before. Monroe is, she's important, but isn't a showstopper the way that Ethel Merman is in the film. Ethel Merman being pretty much the complete lead role in the film. Still, the film demonstrates part of Monroe's acting talent, but a lot more is it a focus on her singing and performing talent, which is fair enough. It is a big show-stopping musical, but overall, in terms of narrative focus, it's very dull and boring and not particularly great. Either way, I gave it 3.5 stars. What the hell's wrong with me? I don't know. I guess still for a musical, it's something entertaining. Hoy vey. So, of course, next up we have Bus Stop. This is a 1956 film. We're jumping 2 years in time, I believe. Yeah, from 1954 to 1956. However, there is a 1955 film which she did in 7-year itch. She did take a lot of time throughout this period to also study more the craft of acting, which is pretty cool. And that's much more obvious when you're watching Bus Stop. So let's take a look at the film. So my quote, "I hate you and I despise you, now give me back my tail." This film is directed by Joshua Logan. Monroe plays Cherie, a saloon singer who dreams of being an actress. She's a messy singer, of course on purpose, for the film. Like, if she's not a messy singer in real life, but damn, she's a messy singer in this film. Of course, because it's part of a character. And our protagonist, Cowboy, falls in love with her, when he first sees her sing, aka from the minute he sees her, he is immediately in love with her, which, that sounds familiar. Don Murray, who plays Bodecker, is a naive, overly enthusiastic cowboy who lacks a social interaction with the real world outside of the ranch. And that gets him into some pretty wild scenarios that are borderline hilarity and cringe. So, fair warning, you might not like him, and if he starts to annoy you in the first 15 minutes, you might not like the rest of the film. That being said, after a period of time, I actually kind of got used to the style of comedy that they were going for, the over-the-top nature for his character, and I actually started to really enjoy it. So that was weird. Yes, so he's loud and he's completely unaware of his stupidity, and it is kind of hilarious. Kind of. Monroe, on the other hand, plays a dunce, unfortunately. A dunce-like country girl who wants fame but is still stuck in the saloon. Beau, after falling for her, proposes and pesters her to no avail. He just continues throughout the whole film. She's from the Ozarks, which she mentions, and hence has a southern hillbilly twang in her accent. That's really the only thing I can note about her having gone to acting school, that she's maybe learned how to sound like a hillbilly. It's a pretty good accent. It's very different. Like, she does not seem like herself at all. Like, she does not seem like the Marilyn Monroe I've been seeing throughout all these films. Her singing, her dancing, her natural performance, and the way that her character speaks and talks, and same thing, but like, the way that she speaks and the way that she interacts with people is so different to anything else that I've ever seen from her. So it's very unique for that element. Given that the film was made in deluxe, this is the the film print, so this being not Technicolor, like the majority of the films, she also does look very different. However, she's very pale, as one main thing to note, but that is also apparently a part of her character, given that her job is that she's she sings and dances in this club and at night most of the time, at least in the afternoon to nighttime. And she sleeps during most of the day, so when she wakes up, she goes back to work. So she doesn't go outside much, so hence she's pretty pale. And to be honest, I can kind of relate to that, given that, most of my days, if I'm working, I spend inside a freezer, so I don't go outside and see the sunlight at all. And outside of that, even days when I stay home, I don't really go outside much. So I can relate. Though I'm not as pale as she is. She's incredibly pale. This is made more obvious later in the film when we actually get close-ups. I know, weird, but they're actually doing close-ups now in a CinemaScope film. Again, never learned by this stage. They have close-ups later in the film where they're back at the bus stop, and he is a lot more of a normal tan person, because obviously he goes outside all the time because he's a cowboy. Works on a ranch, and she's so incredibly pale. Like the reverse shot is stunning for how. I don't think stunning is the right word here. It's kind of mortifying how pale she is, but that's her character. It may also just be a lot of makeup on her character to make herself look more pale as well, so it doesn't seem like it's actually her who's pale. So I can't really justify that. Like I can't say, oh, it's because of all the makeup, but she might not be wearing makeup. It's hard to say. Overall, the film is quite a ride. It often outlives its pacing, but it's quite funny. Mostly due to Beau and his comedic stupidity, but Monroe's innocent and charming Cherie is a good contrast. So she does have some aspect of the, sex appeal trait, given it's still Marilyn Monroe. However, it's a lot more downplayed in this film. It's more, again, unique. But that doesn't mean she's not still taken advantage of in some way by some camera. And mostly it's a cameraman who's actually a character in the film who takes a picture of her butt. So that's, yeah. So yes, overall her accent is consistent and very unlike her. Like, it sometimes has a mild aspect of slipping, but again, most actors have that same difference. But her whole performance is very unique to this film. Overall, I'd probably give it a 3.5 stars out of 5. It's very unique, and worth a watch for like the absurdities, but also how unique her performance is in terms of contrast to her other performances. A lot of fun. This is The 7-Year Itch, a 1955 film directed by Billy Wilder, and of course, Some Like It Hot, a 1959 film directed by Billy Wilder. My quote for The 7-Year Itch: "Isn't she a living doll?" which is meant to be more of a flattery thing of this guy sees Marilyn, just like, isn't she a living doll? Like, she's gorgeous and she's alive. What? Is this like Pygmalion or what? Anyway, so Monroe plays the girl, a woman who rents the apartment above our protagonist and befriends him, mostly because he's lust over her. Over the course of the film, they become better friends, and she helps him to understand the importance of his wife to him in regards to their relationship and everything. This is a very strange film because it tackles this whole idea of pretty much having an affair on your wife, especially because this is like, oh, it's the time of year again, it's too hot in the city and all the men have to work, and they're going to send all their families off to some place cooler for the next 2 to 3 months, because women can't handle heat, apparently, and so the women who are left in town then, like, picked up and floated on by, like, and probably have multiple affairs with all these different other richer men and whatever. So that's more or less the deal. And the 7-year itch relates to the fact that this guy it's a psychological thing. It's like, oh, he's in his 7th year of his marriage, and suddenly he has this itch to, cheat on his wife and do all this bad stuff. So that's fun. It's obviously all made up for the purpose of the film, but the film is also based on a play, and the play is a lot more crude and a lot more sex-focused, because these 2 films are sex comedies. However, because of the Hays Code, this film was restricted a hell of a lot in terms of both its script and the final product of the film once it had been filmed, which is very disappointing because there's a lot of stuff that they could have done which would have been a lot better, but of course they couldn't do that. The best they could do is have Marilyn Monroe in it to still kind of cash in on the fact of this really, really, the play was getting, it was very popular in its day and was, like, everyone was seeing it, everyone was talking about it. They wanted to make a film, but no one could adapt it because it was a sex comedy. So Billy Wilder was like, I'll take it, I'll do it, I'll make it work. It kind of worked. It's not perfect, but it's good enough, I guess. Monroe plays a girl who, though, lacking imagination, is still quite charming and fun. She has the unfortunate nature of men consistently lusting over her and hence proposing to her, and that's why she likes hanging out with married men, because she's like, well, a married man can't propose to you because he's already married. Because I can't marry twice. She's constantly and completely unaware of the fact that she is playing on the imagination of our protagonist, a Mr. Richard Sherman, who's very much like, if you've ever read the short story or seen the film of Secret Life of Walter Mitty, it's very reminiscent of that, in terms of he's kind of a low-life person, but of course he has his wife and his kids, and he's a really not a low-life person at all, because he's got, like, a really good job and stuff, and he's actually a boss, and all this other stuff, but, like, he has this big imagination that, he kind of like typical overthinker, but instead he imagines certain things that he thinks that they're actually real to some degree, so that's not great, but it's used to a comedic effect over anything else. So yes, he's just seen his wife and son off to the countryside to escape the Manhattan heat, where he stays, of course, to work. He plans to avoid the big 3: drinking, smoking, and women. But once the girl comes into his life, the 7-year itch takes hold and he falters to control himself. The film includes the iconic subway breeze scene. This is very notable because once it happened on screen, I'm like, hey, I know this scene. What the there's a lot to say. So, you know how you have... Okay, here is the poster for the movie. There is 2 posters. Maybe this is the second poster where they actually really enforce her with her dress flying up in the air. They filmed this in the city, and because of all the wooing and stuff, they had to refilm it, but because of the censorship, they had to cut it down anyway, so they weren't able to show you the whole entire thing, and they apparently filmed a lot of it, but apparently a lot of the original footage is gone anyway, because they threw it out or something, but disappointing, very much so. Mostly because it's such an iconic thing. It's like, I'm not really the kind of person who's like, yeah, I'd love to see the wind blow up a girl's skirt, but like, this is so iconic that it's like they only have pictures of it, and so they use those pictures for the billboards and the poster and stuff. But they doesn't happen in the film, of course. So it's kind of disappointing that something that is so iconic kind of didn't happen, but it did. But like it didn't, but it did. You know, it didn't happen on film, but it did happen on camera. That doesn't make any sense, I don't think, because film cameras, like photography, you know, it's a photo, but it ain't a video. There you go. So yes, you can see her legs in the shot as her skirt goes up, but you can't see anything below her, above her legs. So you don't get anything from those recreations or stills or whatever. So that was very disappointing when I discovered it. But I guess, you know, because of censorship, it makes sense. But it still sucks because censorship is bonkers. It's kind of a wonder how they would reshoot the scene again and again just to get these behind-the-scenes images of Monroe and her iconic pose, yet the cinemascope nature of it all, of course, doesn't do any of it justice. Hence, what a waste. But of course, this is before I watched the extra behind-the-scenes stuff on the disc that explained how the Hays Code was really a dick. But it really was a dick. Monroe is, of course, a pleasure to watch in the film, as she usually is. Though the film does play on the downside of her ditzy blonde typecast, it's still fun and quite a comedic film, so its uses of her lack of imagination, in contrast with Tom Yule's, aka Richard Sherman's, overall imagination, is kind of put to some pretty good use in a way, because they're a pretty good contrast of character, I think. So even though, of course, it's still her being typecast, it's still not a terrible character, but still not very realistic. That's how it is. So yes, after watching a documentary about the making of the film, it's pretty clear that the film is so much less of what the play was. The sex comedy was reduced so strongly by the Hays Code, however the star power and sex appeal of Monroe, of course, did obviously help the film tremendously when it came to box office. It's sad to know that the most infamous scene of the film and her career was not just filmed in public, but also further refilmed later with a complete recreation of the set. That's the one that they actually used in the film because of all the wooing and stuff was so loud. And this allowed them to, you know, properly do all the audio and stuff. But of course, the filming of the original scene did actually, you know, begin the end of her marriage to Joe DiMaggio. And he may have been abusive about it that night because he was very embarrassed to be with her. Because, you know, back in the day, everyone was so conservative and stuff in America, so they're all like, oh, we don't want to show off that our wives have sex appeal, we don't want them in the movies, we want them to be in the kitchen. It's like, but dude, your wife is Marilyn Monroe, she has talent and she's gorgeous. Who would not be proud of the fact that you were married to Marilyn Monroe? That sucks. Like, it really sucks to know that, like, I don't know if she would have ever had a partner like that, but like, imagine if, all these how much happier she could have been if she had a husband who was so very supportive of her looks and everything that he was just like, yeah, look at my wife. She's gorgeous. She's attractive. She's a talented woman. I am so pleased to be with her. So happy to be with her. So happy that she's with us in this world. All that kind of stuff. You know, if someone was actually fucking positive about it. No, because women have to be subjugated to fucking men being dicks. And that's the 50s for you. But, so yes, he, of course, DiMaggio later, of course, admitted to physically abusing her for not conforming to his views of a traditional household. She, on the other hand, was still a powerful woman who craved publicity and stardom, possibly as a way to counteract her self-destructive ways. To the point that once she'd done, like, her first 4 or 5 films, she was, like, able to say, like, say the producers were like, oh, we want to make this film with you, and she's like, okay, well, I have choice to rewrite the script, and who to cast, and who to direct, and all that kind of stuff. Like, she was so powerful, she can do what Tom Cruise can do today. So, yeah. Actually, I think Tom Cruise has been able to do it for, like, 30 years, but still. Ultimately, we are lucky to have had her as a Hollywood icon, as a sex symbol, and, of course, especially as a powerful and intelligent woman. Yeah, I would like to note as well, there was actually a joke in this film about Monroe herself, where nearing the end of the film, what is it, Richard, is it? So Richard, of course, is in his apartment, and this guy comes in, and he's like, "Oh, I've got a message from your wife and all this kind of shit," and he's like, "How did you know that I was doing all this?" As if because his imagination has taken so much of a control that he thinks that this other guy knows that he's having an affair, but he's not actually having an affair because it's still like a PG movie, so they can't do that affair stuff. And he jokes about the fact that he's like, "Oh, well, I've got I could have Marilyn Monroe in my kitchen." But he does, but it's not Marilyn Monroe, it's the girl, but it's obviously Marilyn Monroe playing the girl, and that's like it's a meta joke. It's not a bad joke, anyway. It's worth mentioning. The film is worth checking out, especially because of the behind-the-scenes knowledge on the film. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. I'd say it's definitely worth checking out, because my Blu-ray had a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff to do with the making of the film. It also had all these behind-the-scenes shots and stuff, and it did actually have the iconic shot of her with... It only has one shot of her with the subway blowing up her dress, so there is that element, but of course there is a lot of documentary stuff and behind-the-scenes stuff that's worth checking out to kind of get more of a perspective on the making of the film, and how the Hays Code fucked it over, and how having Monroe changed it and all, and stuff like this, and all that kind of stuff. And last but not least, we have Some Like It Hot. My quote, "Well, nobody's perfect." This is a 1959 film, of course, directed by Billy Wilder, their second and I believe last film together, because she passed away like 4 years later. I believe it was 63 that she passed away. Anyway, I gave this film, right off the bat, 4.5 stars. It is really enjoyable. And there's 2 hours, and it's 2 hours that could have been an extra, maybe 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours. It had enough area to expand the plot, but I'll get into that. So, Some Like It Hot is an excellent film. It starts with a car chase that sets up the narrative and the historical context of the film, aka that it's 1929 during the Prohibition. They showed us off by literally having a coffin full of booze. And they, have all these secret, meetings to secret clubs and stuff where they sell booze, and it happens to be in a funeral home. It's a joke. It's a very good joke. Anyway, honestly, I won't get much into the plot, but I mean, it's pretty simple. 2 guys who just have seen the mob kill a bunch of people are now running away from the mob. So because they're musicians, they're like, "Hey, we'll dress up as women, join this women's band, and get on the train to Florida for 3 weeks, until it all blows over." And of course, it gets them paid. So there's that. So there's Joe, or Josephine, his female counterpart, is played by Tony Curtis. You may know him because he's an actor, also because he's the father of Jamie Lee Curtis. So there's that. You can really see it, it's really in his face. You can see her face and his face. Anyway. And his arc is more or less follows him actually dressing up as a rich man to win the affection of just sugarcane. So there's that. So he dresses up as a woman to get in the band, and then when they're actually there and performing, he dresses up as a man who pretends to be a man who is rich, a rich millionaire, to sway sugarcane. Meanwhile, Jerry, aka Daphne, aka played by Jack Lemmon, is being swayed by an older millionaire who falls for Jerry's womanly charms. This is a male millionaire, by the way. And then, of course, there is Sugar Cane, who... Did I mention that was Monroe's character? Yeah, that's Monroe's character. Sorry about that. Well, she's not too bright. She's a blonde and is always falling for douchebag saxophonists, but wants to marry a millionaire. Also, she plays ukulele and can sing, because, of course, she's talented. She falls for Joe's disguised millionaire. So again, she's playing the ditzy blonde, which is sucks, but again, I guess a job's a job. I can't really justify fucking that kind of stuff where it's let's put an actor in this kind of a position for like 10 years and they can't do anything about it. There's a lot of bad stuff with old day Hollywood. still is a lot of bad stuff in modern day Hollywood, but you know. Now, I won't exactly just detail every element of the plot, but I will mention that the last, like, 15 to 20 minutes is pretty much one long chase scene, and it's pretty fun, because, like, I was watching the film, and, like, I've got a display button on my, because my Blu-ray players, modern day Blu-ray players, have a really bad thing of not having a little counter, you know, so they don't tell you what the time is, which I guess is fine because it doesn't distract you from how long the film's been going for or whatever. So suddenly you could be watching a 3-hour film and it's been 2 hours, and you look at the thing, it's like, oh yeah, it's been 2 hours. It feels like it's only been 1 hour if it's a really well-paced film. But my remote has a display button on it, and when you click the display button, of course, it tells you all the specs of the film and stuff like that, but it also tells you how long you've been watching it for. And so suddenly it was like, oh, this movie has 15 minutes left. And I'm like, wait, does the movie have 15 minutes left? They've just reintroduced the mob because they've gone on vacation to Florida. And so much is like about to happen in the next 15 minutes that they could at least have another 45 minutes left of this film if they really wanted to. But of course, they didn't. So, yeah, the next 15 minutes is a whole wrap-up of the narrative. And it's, again, pretty much just one big chase scene that goes from here to there to there to there to there and wraps up everything and then gets to the final scene. It's all one big bow and it's beautiful. It is so meticulously written and is quite funny. It's pretty much just simply, they run to this location, they hide. They run to this location, they change costume. They run to this location, they wrap up this storyline. They wrap up, and then they do this again. Then this one big thing happens, and then they're able to run away completely, make their revelations of like, oh, we're kind of men in dress up as women kind of deal, and stuff like that. So let's focus on Monroe. She dazzles, as always. She's gorgeous even in black and white photography, which I'm very sure is because of the time period, because of course, it's set during 1929, let's have it in black and white. It's not widescreen, the big aspect ratio that it had for like the CinemaScope stuff, which is nice. They've actually got it's wider than it's got very thin black bars on the side, so I don't mind that kind of stuff. I'm just trying to note it down for you guys if you even give a shit. You're not here to know about technical specs, you're all here to know if I think Marilyn Monroe is a good actress. I hope. But yes, it's all in black and white. I think that may have been also because, to disguise the fact that Tony Curtis and, Jerry Jack Lemmon are men? Because in colour, kind of look more like men, it's a bit more on the nose. Of course, this is still a sex comedy, so it's meant to be kind of, not as on the nose, but still somewhat. So she sings, Monroe sings, and she dances. She kind of has a signature dance by this stage where she kind of does a thing with her elbows, but it plays with her tits as well, so it's like, she kind of has this like thingy that she does. It's very uniquely her, so there's that, because this isn't like some kind of ballroom dancing thing that she does. She just kind of does regular dancing, I guess. I'm not good with detailing what dances are like, so she's good at what she does. She's good at, like, I think it's more like showgirl dancing, I guess you may call it. This is another film where she is not the main character. She's third wheeling, even though she's top billed. She is the ditzy blonde character again, and it really plays into this one again because she's very, I don't know. Look, let me wrap this up. The jokes were good, the characters were fun, and the picture was a delight. Definitely worth a watch. Again, 4.5 stars of a film. It's interesting to have seen, after having watched this set, to see how many films of hers, at least for the Warner Bros. Lot, it's 20th Century Fox lot, that she is this ditzy blonde. I'd love to, at some stage, check out her other films to see what kind of, like, if she is this type, like, has to play, if she's been typecast like this a lot. I'm very interested to see her final film, which I don't know when I'll be able to watch that. I might, look, they've even got, like, I keep up to date with a lot of film news, and they're even doing I think they might be doing 2 or just 1 biopic about Marilyn Monroe called Blonde. So far what I've seen is that Ana de Armas is playing her, and she actually looks really good for the role, so I'm really excited for that, to see how they depict that. But yeah, I think overall, Monroe is a terrific actress. She's a terrific singer. She has such a unique voice. Like, she could play this kind of downright sexy voice, but then she can also play more giddy and stuff like that, and boop 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 boop, stuff like that. She has so much range. She still has this showgirly performance, but at the same time, that's mostly because in the film she's mostly a showgirl. But yeah, I think overall she is definitely a talent. I don't think that in real life she would have been an actual dumb blonde. I think it's because she was such a sex symbol, and because that's what the films made her to look like, that so many people got used to her in that kind of aspect, that like, oh, she's playing herself in this film, aka the dumb blonde, but that's not actually what she's like in real life. Of course, I'll probably never know outside of if I, again, watch this potential biopic, or see an actual proper documentary that went into detail about her. But yeah, overall, I think it's one of those deals where you just shouldn't put someone in this position where it's all about one aspect of their life. But I think that was always the unfortunate nature of Monroe. She, of course, had such stardom in terms of her sex appeal that most people only really knew her because of that. And I only really knew her because I don't know when I first heard about Monroe, but I've known about her as a person for a long time. There was even that week, My Week with Marilyn film that came out, which I think Michelle Williams portrayed her. I don't ever plan to watch the film. I want something that's more focused on her, that really depicts her in a very realistic way. I don't know if that My Week of Marilyn one does. I feel like that film was tried to justify, like, oh, this is what she's actually like. She's not this blonde bombshell, ditzy blonde. She's actually this blonde bombshell, but she's really intelligent and stuff, and she knows what she's doing. So I'll never really know about that kind of stuff. I hope to at some stage. Anyway, this has been my review of Marilyn Monroe films. 8 of them, the best I could get my hands on from the Forever Marilyn box set. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more. I have a playlist somewhere on screen eventually for my other actor reviews, mostly all female heavy. You've got, who do you have? Cara Delevingne, Taylor Swift, Dakota Johnson, Aubrey Plaza, Masami Nagasawa, which has clocked over 1,000 views. Wow. Karen Gillan, I just did a review on. Lily James as well is quite popular. I plan to do Scarlett Johansson next. It's going to take me a while to get that one done, but let's hope that Black Widow isn't pushed back in terms of release because of this coronavirus stuff. So that's great. Movies are being delayed now because America's too scared. Congratulations, world, you fucked yourself over. So, yes. Overall, I wholeheartedly suggest you take a look at some of these films to get a good idea of her range and the kind of talent that she really had, because she is very talented. If you have a Monroe film that you think I should check out, feel free to comment it down in the comments, or a actress or actor you want me to check out. I've also done Nicolas Cage, Johnny Depp, Keanu Reeves. So I've got a good range there as well if you want to check them out. And that's about it. I'll see you guys in the next video, where we'll be talking about why the bananas and pajamas shouldn't have been cancelled. I don't know. I think I used to do that where it's like, next time we're going to talk about this completely different topic that we'll never actually talk about. Or that was maybe another YouTuber I used to watch. I don't know. Either way, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Adios. Do you find it amusing that I didn't talk about the whole Kennedy thing? I know. It's weird, I don't know what film the whole Happy Birthday Mr. President actually is in. I don't know if that's even from a film. But it's famous, so it's probably from a film.